welcome back, everybody, to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Happy Thursday, everybody. Thanks for joining me bright and early. Exciting video, doing another collab with our good friend and astrologer, Donny Lim. Thank you, Donny.
Thanks for having me here. I'm in my hat trick era. This is the third time I'm back. So and
I like the sports
think,
references.
Yeah. And I'm also in my probably comeback era as well. I don't think I've been doing videos enough, but I've just been bogged down with a lot of chart requests for me to plow through. But today I think I want to talk about the Venus star point that we just had. And it was incepted on 13th of August 2023. So if we actually think about the Fibonacci series, 5-pointed star, which is Venus, pentagram, August number 8, and on the 13th of the month, 5, 8, 13, isn't that the Fibonacci series or sequence? I thought that's very telling.
Yeah.
So this adds to the numerology and all the importance of things. And let me just share, which I probably need you to enable that. I'm going to share like the 5-pointed star that we have now.
Let's see. Did I get the share request? Maybe I have to make you a...
Yeah.
Let's see.
Because some interesting stuff is going on. So.
Does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is the current 5-pointed star in the sky right now. So every time when we talk about a Venus star point, it's actually the energetic conjunction in which the Venus and the Sun actually overlay each other. That's what we track. And so it forms like a pentagram. And the points I've captured here are actually the star points that's in a 4-year period. So if we were to come back to the morning star, when I say morning star, it means that it needs to be formed when Venus goes retrograde and kisses the Sun in the midst of it. Then we form a morning star phase. And if I actually written down here that it's an evening star phase, it actually is a kiss between Venus and the Sun when Venus is in direct motion. So this is what I want to say. And in terms of this Leo star point, is actually one of the longer ones that we are going to have in the sky or cosmically. This Leo star point was actually birthed around 1987, so within the millennials generation. And the first star point was actually formed around the fixed star Regulus, around 29 degrees, because star points are actually moving zodiacally backwards. And this is this Leo star point lasts longer. Usually a star point in a sign lasts for around like 100 years, but this one actually lasts around 113 years. So there's going to be a lot of Sun and Venus kissing each other in the sky.
Yeah, the next one's Aries, right?
The next one is Gemini, actually. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the superior though, right? The morning star, isn't that the next one going to be? It's Gemini. I thought it was Aries. Maybe I'm wrong.
So it's like if you actually look from the left to right. So in 2022 January, we had a Venus retrograde kissing the Sun at 18 degrees 46 minutes of Capricorn. That's when Venus is retrograde. So it's a morning star phase. When Venus is really close to the Earth. 9.5 months later, we've got the very first Libra star point, which happened on the last day of Libra, I think on the 22nd or 23rd, depending where you are, October of 2022. And Venus was in direct motion. So it's an evening star. Venus is like away from the Earth. And then 9.5 months, we've got this right now, where Venus is retrograde in Leo, kissing the Sun at 20 degrees. And then 9.5 months forward, we have one with Venus in direct motion, kissing the sun at 14 degrees 29, which forms that point again. And then Venus will retrograde next in Aries to Pisces.
Gotcha.
And at 2 degrees 39 minutes of Aries, Venus will kiss the sun, forming that little point that we have for the next 9.5 months. So this is a 4-year representation of the star points, but then there's a larger cycle. Because, you know, Venus, if we think about Venus esoterically, the sign that rules Venus in esoteric astrology is the sign of Gemini.
Yeah.
So you have to always think in twos, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what I'm displaying here is 1/2. There's actually like a larger cycle at hand, which is 8 years. And that's when Venus will come back to retrograde in the sign of Leo. So, and if we look at, I wonder if we should wrap up what happened last time, because I've got a very good example. What actually happened in Maui or Hawaii. I think people are just kind of like, what the hell's going on? And
well, also so Hawaii's got a natal Venus retrograde in Virgo. And so it's interesting because if you look at some of the retrograde connected to, like you said, like Regulus, some of those cycles, if you go back, that retrograde did start in Virgo, retrograded into Leo. So because it's the same phase, I would assume it's got some similar things kind of going on, no?
Yeah, I mean, like, in order, because as I mentioned earlier, the Venus star points actually move backwards zodiacally, is against the grain of the zodiacal order. And so before this Leo one was born, we had multiples of like Virgo star points in the sky. So, but what's really interesting is that a lot of things happen while this 29 degrees, 26 minutes Libra evening star point was still active. And I found something that's very telling, actually. And let me just...
And the sun in the Hawaii chart is also in the, I mean, that's where Venus started the retrograde, is that 28 degrees of Leo. So it was right there.
So let me just wrap up the Libra one because it just ended. So this is the Inception chart actually for the Libra star point that occurred on the last day of Libra season last year. And this star point valid till right before 13th of August 2023. So it ended not long ago. And the Maui fires actually started just days before the Leo star point actually started officially. So if we actually look at this Inception chart, I've set it for Singapore, but it can be anywhere. You will see this symbol here, which is right beside Sun and Venus. And this object is called Haumea. And Haumea has got very symbolic meanings. And Haumea is actually the object which represents the Hawaiian goddess of fertility and childbirth.
Oh, wow.
And it's also the mother of the fire and volcano goddess, Pele. That's the Hawaii connection. And numerous other divine offspring. And the name Haumea was given to a dwarf planet, which is this symbol over here, from the Kuiper Belt region of the solar system. And this Haumea object is very close to the planet Pluto. And we all know Pluto is the planet of the underworld that also talks about utter destruction as well. And right beside Haumea, we've got this letter N and the symbol of Chiron. This actually represents the north node of Chiron at 29 degrees. It's not only the moon that has got north node and south node in which we use a lot, but also other planets have got their respective north and south node as well. And this is the north node of Chiron right beside Haumea. So doesn't that kind of paint already like a picture of what's to come for Hawaii?
Yeah.
You know, indicating pain, wounding, potential destruction caused by external circumstances, because Libra is a very projective sign. And at around the time of the fires, actually, in Maui, transit Pluto is at 29 degrees of Capricorn. It's exactly squaring that 29-degree Libra point.
Well, it's in Pluto. Pluto's in Hawaii's fourth house because they're a Libra rising. So it's interesting to see the destruction through the fourth house and the fact that there's also a bunch of like FBI and the whole thing's like locked down and it's very secretive and you can't survey the area. It's quite literal.
And also around the time of like earlier part of August, the transiting nodal axis, the transiting south node is also crossing the 29-degree Libra mark as well. So we've got a dual activation of this whole cluster of things at 29 degrees Libra, which is the star point itself, activated by the south node in Libra via transit, and also squared by that transit Pluto at the last degree of Capricorn as well.
So do you think, I mean, obviously there's a correlation obviously between the solar eclipse that we had in Aries in the spring, but do you feel like that was like a trigger point because
there's actually another trigger point here. Like anything that's 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, 29 Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn. But here we've got the south node and Pluto. So you can see like when I intermingle the meanings of like the south node and Pluto, there's this kind of picture of mass destruction, bigger than what it initially intended to be.
Right.
So there's also, by the way, right now, transiting Neptune is right at the core end of Pisces. So this is in conjunct this 29-degree Libra point. And this in conjunct to Neptune in Pisces via transit. This can represent some kind of like helplessness, delays in notifications. Anything that's in conjunct is also like a blind spot. So people don't see it coming.
There's been lots of talk about the water rights and whether or not they think that this is connected to that. So that could be Neptune, no?
Yeah, because it's in conjunct, there's this kind of like, maybe like usable water didn't arrive on time or arrive on scene, you know what I mean? Or Neptune also here can represent like displacement as well. You know, you're being displaced from your home. Yeah. And when I think about the trigger medium, which is like the element fire, this can be attributed to the fire in Maui happening or occurring shortly after Venus stationed to go retrograde in very late Leo. Leo is a fire sign. And the tail end of Leo also forms like a sextile to this 29-degree Libra point as well. Because if I'm not wrong, transit Venus actually stationed retrograde at around 28, 29 degrees of Leo. So this is sextiling everything at 29 Libra. So that's the fire component. And not to forget that this Inception chart has got Jupiter on the world axis. Anything that's 0 degrees of the cardinal signs, 0, Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn, is lying on the world axis if we actually plot energetically and project it onto the world map. And Jupiter is at 0 degrees Aries. So this really adds the power of the fire, so to speak, because Aries is a fire sign. And last but not least, if we think about Sedna, which is over here at 29 degrees of Taurus, is actually very close to this fixed star in the sky that's very prominent. It's called Alcone or the Pleiades. And when we talk about Alcone or the fixed star Pleiades, this can really be like another kind of blind spot moment because it's something that you're not able to see or you're not willing to see. And with Sedna here, this can be like a kind of, on the more lower vibrational level, Sedna can actually mean some kind of victimization going on, some kind of abuse, some sort of deception also can be tied to this. Some kind of betrayal, bitterness, some kind of gold digging kind of activity going on. And just a lot of blind spots. So that's why this is also tied to like the residents being blindsided, and there's an inability to get help.
It's
And if we,
interesting because isn't that connected to, that's the Weeping Sisters, right? The Pleiades?
yes, the Weeping Sisters, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there's so much
Wow.
outpour of like grief, and also like so much sadness around like, you know, the destruction, or the, shall I say, like blatant land grab, actually, if I were to be honest. And if we were to project this Libra star point that we just had onto the world map, and actually like zoom in on Hawaii, something very interesting came up. So we've got this Mars descendant. So Mars is setting over Hawaii. At the same time, you've got Pallas Athenas also setting as well. You see the lines crossing?
Mm-hmm.
Pallas Athenas actually talks about strategic decision. Mars, of course, is something fiery or fire. And you've got Mercury here that's culminating. So if I were to combine everything, particularly Pallas and also Mars, there's something that's premeditated, or there's some kind of strategized stuff going on. And Mars brings the forcefulness of things, and also the fire component, because Mars is a fiery planet. Both are setting. Setting means that it's a projected energy that's brought onto
so
the
an
land.
attack, basically.
Yeah, it's coming from outside in.
Yeah.
And we've got Chiron over here, which is anti-culminating, which means that it's in the fourth house of homeland. Means that there's like hurt and pain about to be inflicted to Hawaii, with some displacement going on, because Chiron is about that displacement energy. And Mercury that is culminating, which means that it is on top of the heavens. Right over Hawaii at the point of this Libra star point, means that there's some kind of transactional deal, because that's what Mercury means, at hand. And since it is culminating so high up in the chart, this can be coming from certain states or even the government, because that's what the highest part of the chart can stand for in mundane astrology. So if I were to combine these four components, I will go on to say, to be honest, this doesn't look like an accident to me, whatever happened.
It's just so interesting to keep seeing the star point. You know, it's like the same star point that's also connected to the 29, not the Libra, but to Ukraine.
Mm.
It's the same point.
Yeah.
You know, and so anything that's kind of getting kind of kissed with this 28, 27 degrees is definitely like coming up. Now, can you like let us know, I mean, when you see more activations? I would assume just with this upcoming Mars in Libra transit, we're going to see more activations for this one that you're talking about, correct?
So when Mars hit 29 Libra, that's an activation point. And also when Pluto goes direct again and hits that 29 Capricorn point, yeah, there's gonna be some things going on that activates that 29 Libra star point.
Okay, I'm just pulling those dates so we can let everybody know here. So it looks like we're going to see Mars hit 29 around
Libra.
October 11th.
So that's one activation.
Yeah, actually it might be closer to the 10th, actually, now that I look at it. So it's going to be around October 10th. So that's when Mars crosses the activation point. And then the sun's going to cross that activation point, which I think is actually important this year because it's happening with a Mercury cazimi. So we're going to see Mercury cazimi the sun at 28. So it's conjunct that particular degree, and that'll be on October 20th.
And then you've got Pluto swinging back to 29.
Yes,
Capricorn
and then
the
Pluto's going to come back. And that's going to be closer to the end of the year. But man, every time, I don't know about you, but every time Pluto hits that 29 degrees, it feels like a gut punch. So that's going to be around December 19th. And then it'll stay in conjunction to that degree for what, about a month? Yeah. It's not going to be
end of the year, yeah.
Yeah, well, January. So actually, when and this happened, I think, last year too, when Pluto ingressed from Capricorn to Aquarius, it did it with the sun. So at least it was highlighting its ingress. So we're going to see the same thing again. It'll be the Sun Pluto conjunction, January 19th, 2024. I found like on my channel, I kept going back to that Sabian symbol. I don't know if you've read it, but it talks about like secret, business meetings and people having top secret meetings. So this was happening when we were having like all those like, X-Men evil lords that were meeting over in what is it, Davos?
Oh, okay. The WEF thing. Right.
But
Yeah.
there's another big meeting coming, I would assume, somewhere around January. Yeah.
So that is one of the main stuff that I want to wrap up, because this Libra star point, it seems to be like it's still operating in the background. Because if we actually just zoom back to the 5-star points, although I've put down here like these are the active 5-star points, but even if the star point is like on a hand or on a leg, it's still active, in some way, shape, or form. So it will still be operating in the background.
Right.
Until this star point, because the next we will have one last 0-degree Scorpio star point that's coming up, and then we'll fully swing into Libra. Yeah, we'll fully swing into a Libra star point in 2030, but in 2026 we're gonna have 0 degrees 45 minutes Scorpio morning star point.
That's my Lilith. That's gonna be my villain era.
And 0-degree Scorpio star point is what the USA country chart is about in 1776.
Ooh, well, yeah.
So basically, these 5-star
coming.
points, the upcoming like 5-star points is gonna mimic whatever like USA is going through in 1776. Yeah.
So what do you make of the fact that, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of astrologers will agree the star points finally moving into Libra is going to be well welcomed, because Venus being connected to like relationships and fashion trends and music and art. Do you think that there's going to be like a whole revival of some of these like more traditional things?
But I need to ask you back though, what planet actually exalts in Libra?
I guess what, Pisces? So
No, what planet actually
what planet? Saturn, excuse me, Saturn. Yeah.
And Saturn is about that world order, right?
Yeah, but
Libra is also be politically correct as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that there is that component to stuff. I will hold my breath till then. But and then we've got this Aries one, which is right now at the I call this the giving foot. Anything's on the left of the star point is receiving, anything on the right is coming, because we go from left to right. And the foot, which is a grounding force, what's coming? This Aries star point at 2 degrees coming up, I think in 2025, 23rd of March. Yeah, second day of Aries. This one is a bit
Well, the back and forth of the 0 degrees of Aries and the fact that it's going to be in conjunction to like Neptune. I've been looking at that too.
Yeah. And this one will go backwards, and ultimately it will move backwards to 0 degrees of Aries, which is part of the world axis again. So something very big is coming up for all of us collectively. Put it that way. And this Aries, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and this Aries star point will finally ingress into Pisces, in which Venus actually exalts in, only in 2041.
Wow.
So we've got 2022, the birth of the first Libra star point, but it will fully enter Libra only in 2030, and then in 2041 we'll finally have the birth of a Pisces star point. So for the next like 19 years, which is a nodal axis return, by the way, around 19 years, we are in for a ride. We'll be older, by the way, by then. So
we'll still look good, don't worry.
Oh yeah, try to look snatched, right? Yeah.
Do you think there's any correlation, and maybe it's just me noticing this because it's, South Node in Libra and Venus retrograde, this activation of the star point that's still kind of going on in the background, 29 degrees of Libra, that's kind of like a mark of divorce, no? I mean, we're seeing a lot of people that are separating or divorcing themselves from partnerships or from old ideas about relationships.
It's actually let me just kind of go through like this chart first, because we're actually on the precipice of very severe economic headwinds, put it that way. And this M2 here, basically M1, M2, M3 in economics term, from what I can recall from high school, those are like money aggregate policies or monetary policies in short. And it actually shows you like economic fluctuations according to money supply. Wow. That's what the M is for. And we are actually coming into 2023. We are probably, if I were to be honest, if you think about it esoterically, we are right in the tightest part of the birth canal. That's where we are in 2023. Okay. And if we were to look at the Inception chart of this current Leo star point, you will get to know why. What you mentioned earlier, Candice, about like divorce, be it divorcing, like removing yourself from a contractual obligation or financial commitment or all those stuff. And that's because that 20-degree Leo star point is pretty tightly square Uranus.
Right, divorce. Yeah.
And this Venus retrograde, because this point at 20 degrees Leo was formed with Venus moving back and forth in retrograde phase. So Venus actually squares Uranus 3 times. And Venus-Uranus is really like that liberation of oneself from some kind of commitment, because it's a heart-driven action. That's why I see the star points, Sun and Venus, to liberate oneself from some kind of things that's been holding them down.
So just as a reminder to those of you guys who are watching, so this is a part of a storyline in the retrograde phase that started in early July. That's when we started seeing the first square. And so Venus has retrograded back and she squared again just recently in August. And the final square is going to be taking place around September 29th, 2023. And that's why I keep telling all of my, viewers, the Venus retrograde on the back end is going to be still very wild. So like, even though Venus is about to go direct, she's going to be like, hold my beer. Because she's still going to have an elongated square to Jupiter and then another square to
And
Venus.
of course, it's like the star point actually holds a longer cycle of validity.
Right.
So this star point squaring Uranus, this energy will still be like in the background operating. If anything is like happening around like 20 degrees to 23 degrees of the fixed signs.
Okay.
In which
we're going to see that in Scorpio season. We're going to see the new moon in Scorpio.
Ooh,
with Mars is going to square that. Yeah.
We will go on to the activation dates for this Leo star point because I've written here. Yeah.
Cool.
And I would just like to also tell the audience that if we look back 4 years ago, that means there's an evening star, Leo star point, which was formed by Venus in direct motion kissing the sun. This actually happened in August of 2019. And each star point lasts around 9.5 months. So this Leo star point back in 2019 August lasted till June 2020. And what do we have in January to March 2020?
Oh, the Rona.
The Rona. And I actually looked back at that chart, actually. This actually happened at 21 degrees 11 minutes of Leo. And there was a very tight inconjunct or quincunx. That means a 150-degree aspect to Pluto in Capricorn at around 21, 22 Capricorn.
Wow.
When I see a quincunx, one of the things is that there may be some kind of global health stuff coming up. So 4 years back, this Leo star point, there was an inconjunct, 150-degree aspect to Pluto. which was still in Capricorn in earlier degrees. And following the months in early 2020, there was transit Ceres, transit Mars. There was also transit Jupiter and Saturn, all around 20 to 22 degrees of Capricorn, swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
So that's when things were in full blown steam, you see, like as in the whole world just crickets, lockdown.
Yeah.
So it was happening during the evening star phase of the Leo star point 4 years back.
Wow. Well, I mean, I keep thinking about how the Venus retrograde, it's a bit wide. I usually work with like 2 to 3 orbs. I like a tight orb, but Venus in this most recent one in August with the sun at the start point does create a bit of a loose yod to Neptune and Pluto, especially when Venus started her retrograde in the late degrees of Leo, around 28 degrees. It's almost an exact yod to both Neptune and Pluto. So it's almost like the fires, the issues with younger people, with children, with the stock market is trying to show or kind of like unveil all the shady shit that Pluto and Neptune are doing behind the scenes.
Because whatever Leo does, it brings it to the light.
Right. Yeah. Puts it on the world stage.
Yeah. And it's very close. And when Venus actually stationed, with her getting ready to go retrograde, she's on the fixed star Regulus, right in the heart of the lion.
Yeah.
And this is the first Venus retrograde that is fully in Leo, actually. Previously, there was an overlap like into early Virgo, then swinging back. You know, so this is
extra messy.
But it's extra illuminating as well. But it's that square of that star point to Uranus that I'm like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm like, not too sure. So if we think about Leo, don't we think of Hollywood?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And what are we having in recent months? Don't we have the actors and writers strike in the USA?
Yeah, I think a lot of that's the square to Uranus because it's literally dealing with the unions.
The unions is Uranus, yeah. Are they paid enough, Taurus? You know, all those
But
things.
not only that, are they upholding, I think, the art form of theater and acting and real physical actors, or are they integrating AI?
Which is Uranus as well. Because if we think about it, Taurus actually rules the face. Didn't was it the latest Indiana Jones film where the company just paid for Harrison Ford's face to be superimposed?
Did they get a discount?
I'm not sure though, but Uranus is the AI and is that digital imprint of the face, which is Taurus.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because those are quite active movies, and he's an older gentleman now. But yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. I know that there is talk about like scanning faces and saving it in like a database, especially for background actors. So it sounds like they're starting to try to do that with background, which might completely get rid of those types of, gigs for some people. But I guess that is probably concerning as an actor because they may not feel like they have a lot of control over the future of their roles if their face is somewhere on a database and they can just throw them into any type of movie.
And also, there's a piece of news that happened in Singapore, which I find very appropriate for this square of the star point to Uranus. And I read the news title: Walt Disney Company's Lucasfilm is winding down its operations in Singapore after almost 20 years in the country, reflecting challenges in the industry.
Yeah.
Very accurate. And Taurus is also value system. And Uranus is really like, if I were to summarize Uranus and Taurus, there can be this kind of like wokeness. And I know like I've been dragged before, like when I mention wokeness, the meaning of wokeness actually like mutated with the years. But the headline here that I've plucked out from the news is that Disney going woke and going broke.
Right.
Over box office losses.
Yeah, there's definitely been some how do I put this? Fair concerns over some of the ways that they're, I guess getting involved culturally and some stuff that's going
Yes.
on with their media and their content.
And I think the next part of this title is that liberal agenda being pushed in movies like Lightyear and The Little Mermaid are turning off moviegoers, which is exactly this square. So it's
Hmm.
hurting their money because Taurus
Yeah,
is about what you have in the bank. And
right.
Uranus means that it's like, it's huge amounts, and it's like Jupiter is not far behind. So it's like a lot of massive losses in the millions or
Right.
hundreds of millions in that respect. And the next part that I just want to quickly go through is that I also use a lot of midpoints in my analysis. And this actually adds like so much more juice into the analysis. I know it's a pretty small font here, but I'll just like to cover this very quickly. And I both look at direct midpoints and also indirect midpoints. When I talk about direct midpoints, or what is a midpoint altogether? A midpoint is basically the shortest middle distance between two separate parts in a chart. And if that point actually lands at 20 degrees of Leo, I consider that a direct midpoint. So what do I define as an indirect midpoint? Any two parts in the chart, the shortest distance, if they land around 20 degrees of Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio, then there's an indirect midpoint because it opposes or squares that 20-degree Leo point. Okay. And something very telling when we talk about direct midpoints, because we've got the Vesta series midpoint, which is direct. We've got the Mars and Moon midpoint, and we've got the Pallas and Juno midpoint. I'll go through very quickly what each one actually means. When we talk about Vesta series midpoint, it's actually talking about the broadest definition will be a location for the help or care of mothers and children. But on the more lower vibrational side, it can also mean surrogate farms or surrogacy farms. And since it lands at 20 degrees of Leo, which can mean like someone in the entertainment field, there can be some accusations of a very probably prominent person in the entertainment industry who may be linked with perhaps owning a surrogacy farm in a foreign country.
Wow.
I think you know who I'm referring
Yeah.
to.
Does their name start with O?
Starts with letter B, actually. She's on
Oh,
tour
okay.
currently. She's on tour
Okay.
currently. I'll just leave it as that.
Really?
Okay.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
surprised by that, but okay.
Yeah. And that may be also Vesta series midpoint can also mean some kind of resonation of sorts. So someone prominent, it could be like a president. Leo can be also represented by this sign. Can also suddenly resign. Okay. And Vesta series midpoint can also mean loss of home and family. I think we just covered that not long ago. It's also talking about sacrifice of life and also denial of the fullness of living. And one very key note here is that Vesta series midpoint can also talk about locations where food and green security is prominently featured in its theme and motivations.
Wow.
Okay. And we're going to go back to that when we discuss like other charts. So let us talk about the next midpoint, which is Mars and Moon midpoint, which lands, the middle distance between these two planets actually lands around here. And this can be violence, attacks, fights directed towards biological women and conventionally feminine functions. And this is even more prominent because Black Moon Lilith, which is at 24 Leo, is right beside the star point not far away. Anything that's Black Moon Lilith really talks about reproductive stuff. I mean, isn't there a new term coined like bonus hole?
Don't even get me started.
Okay, cool. Let's just leave it as that.
No,
And
it's yes.
yes, bonus hole actually means the ham sandwich. Okay, just for so and Moon and Mars can also mean like the burning of crops as well. Crops being set on fire. And it also can mean actions based on instinct. So people can be more rash with that Moon and Mars. Or this can be utilization of military against the people as well by the government. Moon and Mars midpoint on that star point in Leo. Because Leo is the government. Moon and Mars midpoint means that weaponizing the military to deal with its own citizens or people. And the last direct midpoint is Pallas Juno. And this can be talking about practical legal action. So there's more lawsuits coming. And isn't Leo ruling the heart? Taurus here ruling the rhythm. And Uranus is erraticness.
Yeah.
So you know where I'm coming from? Myocarditis. Isn't this a configuration for myocarditis?
Definitely. And I think also something that I talked a lot about prior to the Venus retrograde was just that Venus was going retrograde in a sign that deals with the heart and children. And that we may see some of this stuff come up in correlation to celebrities or celebrities' children. We saw like LeBron's son that, had cardiac issues. We've definitely seen a number of performers that have had some issues. I mean, I don't know. It's definitely, I don't think it's not a coincidence.
And also bringing back to the Maui thing, isn't there still a lot of children that's missing?
There's a lot of children that are missing. There was a delay and I think complete lack of clarity revolving around how many. And there's been speculation. So I'm just going to say this because we don't know factually, but there's been speculation
Allegedly.
Yeah, that FEMA was hiding bodies. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And then let's talk about the indirect midpoints now, which include Jupiter-Uranus midpoint, Chiron-Vesta midpoint, and also Pluto-Pallas-Athena's midpoint. Let's just go through one bit by bit, these three indirect midpoints. Let's start with Jupiter-Uranus midpoint, squaring that 20-degree Leo star point. That really talks about the battle for supremacy in the field of microchip dominance. That really comes to the forefront.
Yeah.
And it also talks about nuclear invasion or threats as well. This square. Wow. It's also about reversal of fortunes in the technological sector as well, because it's a square. And there's also urges for independence. Maybe some countries are just so sick of being under the, neo-colonialism of others, and they want to have their independence. And last but not least, it's about conflicts concerning differing life philosophy or religion as well. And it's also to be independently enthusiastic about one's own unique interests. And also to blow something completely out of proportion or to have an extreme reaction to something. This also can be like a extreme allergy to something as well, by the way. When I think about this, Jupiter-Uranus midpoint squaring the Venus star point.
So you've heard about how Bill Gates was doing work revolving around, obviously like, I think lab-grown meats or synthetic foods and
mosquitoes.
There's been a lot of mosquitoes, but a lot of people were talking about, I think connected to West, about how, if somebody were to just, be genetically modified and they become allergic to beef, they won't eat it.
Isn't Taurus talking about the bull?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Cow meat and lab grown. Uranus is lab.
Yeah.
Laboratory. And the next midpoint is about Chiron and Vesta midpoint. And this really symbolizes healing locations, including hospitals, clinics, and health spas. So something in the medical field that's stirring. And Chiron Vesta midpoint is also talking about, it reiterates like the health issues such as allergies resulting from one's physical location as well. And this Chiron Vesta, so Vesta is this body here, and Chiron is here, okay, just for the audience. It also symbolizes people who are moved from their homes or away from their families due to endangerment in some way. It also can mean orphanages. And it also represents locations for displaced persons, such as refugee camps, people who are in exile or isolation. And it also infers homes or environments which are bleak and deteriorating, in which there's an effort to conserve or prevent, save or restore in some manner. And last but not least, on a more morbid front, this can be talking about graves, morgues, or dumps. And last but not least, this Chiron Vesta midpoint can also be talking about people in charge of or responsible for countries harming their own population and other countries. And this also can talk about exploited colonies as well. Doesn't that say a lot here?
Yeah.
And last but not least, the last one will be Pluto and Pallas midpoint, indirectly aspecting 20 degrees Leo. This can mean mental anguish and also dictatorial attitudes. This also can mean financial institution and or government functions being called into question. And on a broader level, this can also be talking about spying or more broadly underworld-related activities as well, which may come to the surface. And I will just leave it as that.
It's amazing how much it can see, like how much you can see using the midpoints for some of these, you know, particular asteroids and goddesses. It's really insightful.
Yeah. So I will just leave it as that. I think we've kind of covered like a whole big goo of like what can happen over this Leo morning phase star point. And let us go on to the activation dates. I think these will be very interesting. So what's coming up in September will be transit Venus, activating this star point. And after that, we will go on to the month of November. November is the month that you were mentioning earlier, Candice. A month
that
in
one
which
has me shaking in my boots. Let me tell you, squaring all my south node is 21 degrees of Leo, so this is sitting in conjunction to that.
Right, and so for the month of November, I've marked out 2023. That is going to be activated by transit series because it will be inching closer to the last degree of Scorpio. That means squaring this Venus star point via transit. And there's also a new moon in Scorpio that is conjuncting Mars and opposing Uranus.
Yeah.
So this literally forms like what we call in astrology a T-square. 20 degrees, 20 degrees, 20 degrees, very close, you know. So it's a reactivation of this Leo star point again. And so the whole month of, because lunation, I usually give like a wider number of days because the energy is still holding itself, plus minus, you know, one to 2 weeks. So the whole month of November, I've marked out as, you know, pardon my language, but potential shit show.
Pun intended, Scorpio.
And now let's move on to first half of February, because there's an Aquarius new moon around 20 degrees as well of the fixed signs, which is this time opposing 20 degrees Leo. And that lunation in I think it's on the 9th or 10th of February. That star point will be squaring Uranus.
Yeah.
And Uranus will be around 20 degrees. So back to that activation again. So the first half of February. And let's move on to March. March 4th, we've got transit Venus activating this Leo star point with her being at the tail end of a fixed sign. And then 11th of March 2024, we've got transit Mars. That will be activating this 20-degree Leo star point again via hard aspects. Is at the tail end degree in a fixed sign. And then the big event, 15 to 21st of April, there will be a conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. I think that's the big thing that's being highlighted here by this star point's inception map. And Jupiter and Uranus will actually conjunct at around 21-ish degree, very close to 22 degrees of Taurus. So it will still square this Venus star point in Leo. So I would say 15 to 21st April 2024, a massive activation, because we've got not one but two planets conjuncting, and those are the big boys. And the last date in which I've marked out will be 7th to 9th of May 2024. And this is where there's a lunation at around 19 degrees of Taurus, with Uranus nearby. So you can see how like all the fixed sign new moons are like the major turning points for this Leo star point. All three of them coming up.
Doing their job, carrying that energy, making the change happen.
And the rest are what I call like the more minor one, except that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Yeah, that's in towards the that's happening the 2nd to 3rd week of April 2024. Right. And I've actually written here some things if I were to pull in Saturn, because actually Saturn is not with the naked eye be seen as an important planet in this Leo star point, but I do use an aspect which is a quindecile. I think that how it's pronounced is a 165-degree aspect. And if you rotate 20 degrees of Leo towards that Saturn at 5 degrees of Pisces, this is 165 degrees. And a 165-degree aspect is actually an aspect of obsession, of pushing motivations. So there's this kind of like pushing to merge the energy of Sun and Venus and also Saturn. Saturn can mean a few things. Saturn can mean sanctions. Pisces can mean oil. So we're going to touch on a bit about Saudi. Actually, I prepared a chart for that. And the BRICS currency, that's why it's there to kind of skirt around the oil sanctions. Saturn isn't at lockdowns. Pisces, is it something we can't see like a virus? I'm just saying.
Well, it's in things that are invisible, but it's also about things that affect the immune system.
Yes, something that weakens it. Yeah.
A suppressant, yeah.
And so like there's also themes surrounding that's also tied into the theme here. And I've also written that Saturn, it also means control. Pisces can also mean international shipping routes as well. So there can be this kind of dominance. So in short, I'm just going to go through very quickly, and then we'll just move on to application of charts. And first and foremost, Pisces can also mean nurses and doctors. And Saturn means Saturn is a depressive energy, so there could be a shortage of medical staff. Secondly, this can be due to the materialization of the liquid that was introduced or being pushed down our throats by mandates earlier. And this may bring forth even more lawsuits. There's things that's coming to the surface pertaining to that. Because of severe allergic reaction. Pisces can mean allergy, literally. And also the control of international shipping routes. And this is done via taking tangible actions to materialize a long ongoing reunification. That's Pisces, reunification ideology, Pisces. And the next one is very literal, because if I actually combine Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus, Taurus rules the land, property, real estate, a roof over our head, the bare essentials. And that it literally means Evergrande and Country Garden, the two biggest kind of property developers, or at least like the top few in China. And they're going through such a huge
Going through a bust right now.
yeah,
Big time.
exactly. So if I combine Saturn and also like, because Saturn can also rule land, Taurus can also rule land as well. If I combine these two and with the Leo Venus star point, yeah, and with the Mars and Moon midpoint on this, you can see how like everything points to the housing bubble, you know, going through its
And the
deflation.
impact it'll have on the market too. So, I mean, that's the square between the second house of land and possessions and the fifth house, which is the stock market.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's via that it can actually drag down the world economy. That's why I need to flash like the, we are in the tightest part of the birth canal, like in terms of on the economic front, on the worldwide basis. And another thing that I want to point out is that we did talk about something about displacement and refugees, right, with the midpoints.
Mm-hmm.
But this Mars and Moon midpoints in the mix, something tells me is that if people are kind of paranoid regarding like these refugees coming to our land, you're not paranoid for suspecting that there may be some kind of spying agents or some kind of foreign military personnel being implanted into your population as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really coming from talking to a few individuals, that I have. And I've also talked, because that Sun and Venus squaring Uranus, this can be, because Leo rules children, like you mentioned earlier, Candice, and organized crime can be the Jupiter-Uranus midpoint squaring it.
Trafficking
or slavery.
Yeah.
In that aspect. And also online phishing scams can also be this square as well. And also the birthing of a new digital Uranus currency, Jupiter and the sign of Taurus squaring that.
Backed by gold, Leo.
Backed by gold, Leo. There you go.
I've been saying that for a while. I'm like,
you can see how just by this chart, it just says like, my God, so much. And also, Uranus is also Prometheus as well, the sky god, and is rocking the earth, Taurus, and Jupiter exacerbates it. So there's a lot more natural disasters, but also this can be induced by something like an artificial machine as well, like a weather altering machine. I'll just leave it as that.
Well, okay, so on that note, really quick, so when we have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction taking place spring of 2024,
in April,
at that time, Venus is in Aries and it's receiving a conjunction to retrograde Mercury, which is behind this conjunction. And that's going to be very, very close to Chiron. So yes, I do think that you're right about that. And I think that individuals may start having effects also from frequencies.
Yes. It can also be 5G towers, because Uranus can rule radiation. With Jupiter expanding it, maybe going to crank up the frequencies of the 5G towers.
Yeah.
As well. So so it's quite loaded though, just by using this chart. And let us look at, since we talked about Hawaii, let's talk about the how about we talk about the main event in the mundane world? Because I've been looking at this chart for the longest time. And let's look at Saudi Arabia. And I've managed to pull a chart of Saudi Arabia and use like natal progressions and solar arc. That's how the
Okay.
the tri-wheel is constructed. And I've already been eyeing this chart since Pluto entered Aquarius, because they do have the sun at 0 degrees of Libra.
Right.
So when it's like there's a shift of power, now like the prince is calling the shots, because the old king is like, getting quite advanced in age, really. And so the prince, I think his the short form of his name is called MBS, Mohammed bin something, MBS, yeah. And he's really teased the world when Pluto entered the first few degree, the 0 degrees of Aquarius, that they're interested in joining BRICS. And so very recently, I think they've got like a meeting right at the beginning of Virgo season, just days ago. And they've been offered an invitation to join the BRICS nations.
Wow.
Saudi Arabia, amongst other places like Iran. I think there's six countries, but there may be more. So I've looked at whatever that's triggered by this Leo star point, because it's already been formed since the 13th of August of this year. And it's happening in their 8th house natally.
Wow.
And it's about support of another. And then whatever that I've highlighted in light pink, those are the ones that's really like activated, that's close to 20 degrees of a sign. And then we've got Pallas, Athenas, and also their ascendant. And you've got progress, Pallas, Athenas, and progress, Uranus, which is about alliance. Literally, this square between Pallas, Athenas, and Uranus is strategic alliance. And because natally is on their ascendant, they are very strategic. And isn't Sagittarius all about international trade?
Yeah.
As well.
It's the same. It's right around the same degree as the US ascendant.
Mm-hmm. And then we've got solar arc, Pallas, Athenas again. You can see how this tree chart.
Yeah.
Isn't oil all about Pisces?
Mm-hmm.
They know they've got oil.
Yeah.
And they want to skirt around potential stuff that has to do with the petrodollar, because that is the international trading standard currency. And so you can see how all this ties into, they are seeking support by doing something strategic to find new friends that they can group together or gang up with. And they're making that decision because of the oil reserves that they have.
Which is very Jupiter Uranus. That's what a lot of people don't realize, is that this is about people banding together and voting with their dollars. This is about, collaboration with resources. And at 21 degrees, it is going to be global. There is going to be some new global physical backed currency, even if it is digital.
Mm-hmm.
This is also the tail end of the US Pluto return. And so it's interesting to see this Venus retrograde in and in conjunct to the natal Pluto in the 2nd house, which is how other people are reworking something about their resources and the direct impact it's going to have on the United States, which I don't really think people are really going to realize until we start getting into the end of this year or the beginning of 2024. Yeah, the US is heading for some kind of like government budget shutdown in October.
Well, and of course, April 2024 Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I mean, that's kind of like the big highlight.
That's going to be a really interesting tax season, that's for sure.
And if we actually zoom away from Saudi Arabia, because Putin did sit with the leaders of the African continent earlier in St. Petersburg, I think that happened like with Venus already in Leo. So it happened recently as well. And I've put up the chart of Central African Republic, their chart, and also did like the progress and solar arc direction. And all those that I've highlighted is very telling. Because they've got Sun, Uranus, and 4th house cusp around those degrees in Leo, highlighted by the star points. So it's about Sun, day, Uranus, alliance,
Yeah.
friends. Let's join this group. Let's find more likable friends, to buddy up with. And fourth house can mean endings and beginnings, the end of a relationship, perhaps with the West, and also starting one with the BRICS economies. And what's really, really telling is that they've got Ceres, which rules grains, conjunct their midhaven, because Putin did promise the African nations of grain security. To actually it's a caveat for them to buy in. So isn't this kind of, very telling?
Well, I mean, it's such a rich, part of the world. I mean, Africa's got so many of the vital minerals and all of the things that we're going to need potentially for the future of some of the stuff that they're trying to do with vehicles and mining and stuff. So I mean, it makes sense to befriend them.
And also in the progression chart, you've got Venus via progression hitting in the sign of Scorpio, which is all about resource. Mm-hmm. They know they've got it. And then we've got Sun at 21 Libra. Why not we use that to our leverage? Because Libra can mean leveraging as well. Forming that, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You benefit me, I benefit you. And then, of course, it's like, the solar arc sun follows the progress sun as well. So you can see how all this are like, oh, by the way, this Venus can also rule, because it's technically in their natal six, so it can talk about debts as well. Because Putin did also say that on top of grain security, we are also going to pardon your previous debts for this continent.
Wow. So
Venus money, Scorpio loan, borrow from others, and you're being pardoned.
Wow.
It's a lot. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it just, to be fair, it just seems like everybody's like really just kind of over the United States shit. I mean, in the way that, they have been running things financially, and the fact that the dollar has really kind of
been in
charge for,
for the longest time. And this is just one of the articles which I pull out to kind of substantiate my, our talking point. And India, which is one of the BRICS countries, just bought 1 million barrels of oil from UAE using Indian rupees instead of the petrodollar.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something very telling. And shall we move on to lighter stuff?
Sure.
Because Venus star point, I always think about Venus star point because I'm a Gemini, with Gemini midhaven and Mercury. So I always want to like balance it with a bit of like lighter stuff. And let's talk about Lizzo's lawsuits.
Oh, I've been looking at this chart ever since we talked about doing this video, and I'm very, very curious to see what you think, because obviously she's kind of in the direct line of fire a multitude of different ways.
And very interestingly, because I've highlighted, as with every other chart, like all those in pink are all those things that within the orb that's being activated. And this current 20-degree Leo star point is in her first, which means her life path as an artist, Leo. Or bring into prominence for better or for worse. And it's highlighting in her natal chart the T-square of the nodal axis and Venus. Venus in the 11th house in Gemini, isn't that something to do with movement, ladies, movement?
Yeah.
Her posse is also 11th house, right? Yeah, her groupies. Mm-hmm. And that North Node in Pisces, support using the feet, is aren't they dancers? Those who actually brought the lawsuit.
Yes. Yeah.
So you can see how this actually brings in. And then South Node and the Moon conjunct in Virgo, body shaming. It's one of the charges. And but what I can see is that, to put things in perspective, there's this, when I see the progressed South Node and the solar arc ascendant all lining up with the moon, I think it's really about her being burnt out by work, because second house is her energy as well. And she's gone through like a weight loss journey, right? As well. Maybe it's really
more or less.
it's about that projection as well. It's like, if I can do it, why can't you? But of course, it can be misconstrued 1,001 ways, right? Where it comes out that kind of, hypercritical manner, because, Moon in Virgo is not an easy placement, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got progress, Jupiter, that represents the lawsuit so high up in the heavens in her natal chart.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, this thing can be dragged out because her progress, Jupiter, is still in Taurus, and Taurus is like a fixed sign. It's like this thing will go on and on. But Jupiter can also mean lawyer. She did spend quite an exorbitant amount of money to employ like a pretty well-known Hollywood lawyer as well, in order to defend her. But what really is telling, at least to me, is that her natal midheaven at 3 degrees of Taurus are being trined by both co-rulers that conjunct of the 7th house cusp of lawsuits. So the MC is trined by by Saturn and Uranus, which both rule the 7th house cusp of lawsuits. So what this is telling me is that these accusations that's coming forth and is still unfolding, these may easily try, topple, or stain her current professional reputation or fame in the music industry. So that's what I do see. Yeah.
Well, she's going to have that Saturn transit, through her 8th house throughout this next coming year, and it's going to start sitting on the North Node in opposition to her moon. I mean, it's very clear she may have brands that may not want to work with her, and that might impact her, I would think.
Yeah. Because also Ceres at 13 degrees, that's where Saturn will station next year, very close to 13 degrees. I think it's at 12-ish. And Ceres in the 8th house can mean all the advertisers as well, like bringing her the abundance, you know what I mean? Because Ceres can also mean abundance. 8th house in Pisces is like, you gotta appear in all these campaigns and stuff like that. And then, Saturn just comes and rob you, of all those things. So
and
for
the
the
Venus
next
retrograde on her ascendant, I mean, it started in conjunction to what, her Lilith?
Oh, it's station retrograde, yes.
Yeah. So, who else has that ascendant? It's Trump. Trump has that 29 degrees. So that's why it's interesting to see both of them so much in the news right now. I mean, maybe not so much Lizzo. I think her PR team's doing a decent job, but.
Oh yeah, I mean the PR team's working like overtime, because like Progress Vesta in her natal 12, that's where Venus was stationed direct coming up. I think it's around like, it's already at 12 degree-ish. So gonna see more like behind the scenes, like, they're probably sweating. So let's move on to Doja Cat.
Oh boy.
Okay. For her, I know a lot of fans have unsubscribed from her because she's been kind of
involved with the Illuminati,
or acting out, I would say, just dragging her fans basically.
Okay.
And what I can see here is that, in short, it's really about someone who's desperately trying to tell the fans and audience some stuff about her recording contract, and that's really coming from that Saturn in Pisces in the 5th house. Because Saturn is contract, Pisces is that musical contract, because it's also highlighted by that Leo Venus star point as well. And there's one thing that links Doja to Katy Perry to Kesha.
Oh, that producer dude?
Dr. Luke.
Yeah.
And I can see from the activations, I've written everything here, but what I want to say is that it's taking a toll on her mental health, because that she can't really get out of her contract, and she literally is like, she's just like, you know what? Screw all of this. Let me just kind of live my life unapologetically. And that's why she just kind of blasts everyone, because there's also like a desperate cry for help that I can see as well. And the previous star point, she's got ascended at 29 Libra.
Yeah, and that Pluto square.
So she's going through a lot, and her man, which is represented by that Juno, her partner's being dragged because the partners received has got questionable past and accusations coming forth, and the fans are trying to notify Doja. But of course, she's like, screw all this, you know what I mean? It's like that Pluto transit square. I mean, it's just like she's been having the most.
Wow.
Put that way, but I do have some kind of empathy for her, because it's like when I see that Saturn coming in, I was like, And then her third and ninth house are at 29 degrees as well. That's why she's been acting out with her posts and with whatever she's like the news that's out there. And of course, people say that she sold her soul to the Illuminati. Maybe all this are deliberate because she wants to jinx her current musical contract. Just want to get the F out, you know what I mean, of all this. Yeah. So yeah, a very loaded chart actually. This one really took me the longest. But when I looked at it, probably I was like, okay, I can see where she's coming from. And the last one, how about we talk about Justin Trudeau? Because part of my subscriber base, they notify me who is in the whole big fat mess of things. Basically, in short, back in 2020, when the previous Leo star point, when the Rona kicked off, there was a star point at 21 degree 11 minutes of Leo. And this is very closely conjunct his series natally in the 12th house of clandestine affairs or big pleasures. So, and in Leo means that someone of prominence, someone famous, someone who's perhaps a royal family member, someone who's a film star, or someone who's a head of state. So, all those people, that's Leo. And it's happening in the background, this love thing. And they basically, through blind items or, people piecing the timeline together, that they actually decided to live apart back in 2020. But of course, they got to keep up with appearances. They can't announce their separation back then. So they kind of stuck together. And there's actually a clip of them filming a public service announcement or PSA. And the director was like, now go on and kiss. And you can see the reluctance.
Oh, man.
It's super weird. And they pause for easily 10, 15 seconds before they just went in for it. You know what I mean? Because after the Leo star point in 2020, June on the 4th, there's a 13 degree 35 minutes morning star, because Venus did go retrograde in Gemini in 2020. And that formed that star point. And Justin Trudeau has got Mercury in Sagittarius in opposition to that Gemini star point. So I'm like, probably that's when they decided to kind of,
to separate, yeah.
But fourth house is very swept under the carpet, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's very secretive as well. And moving on to more recent times, that Libra star point at 29 degrees is actually forming a yoke with his midheaven and also his Mars as well, that 29, where my cursor is. So that's probably okay, we can't do this anymore. So this happened probably recently, from October last year onwards. We gotta just let people know. And
then the Saturn transit in his 7th house. I mean, that's making it official.
Yeah, and that's when okay, we're going for official separation. And you can see how but I would say, just to be fair, he is not the only guilty one. Both.
She's an Aries, right? I think
so.
I looked at her chart. I think she is, yeah.
I just know that both have kind of tapped out of the boundaries of, whatever they're trying to portray, And I just checked who's got a prominent planet around 22 degrees of the fixed signs, and a certain royal family member actually came up very strongly, and certain people have prompted me to look at it. So I'm going to say allegedly. Allegedly Justin and Princess Eugenie.
Oh, wow.
Because she's got her moon at 22 Aquarius in exact opposition.
Leo royal. Yeah.
So Aquarius can also mean like the super upper class, right? You know, it's that jump, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Allegedly, I was saying allegedly, and it was actually mentioned that Sophie Trudeau and a certain future James Bond, they also have something going on around the same time. So I'll just leave it as that.
Huh. I mean, I'm just relieved it's not Macron, honestly, after all the memes. Everybody showing all those pictures of Leo France. So I was thinking, oh, is it them? But no.
Or is it those two, you know what I mean? The buddies.
Yeah.
The buddies. Or it can be someone who's back home in Canada who wears a turban. I'll just leave it as that. Wow. So it's like a big fat mess, but we are all for it. We always love a little bit of a messy thing.
We gotta serve the tea.
Well, we are just spilling the astro tea, right? And then I think that's yeah, I'll stop here. I've got some more charts, but I would think that that's kind of like, you know, it is what it is.
Well, I'm so glad that we were able to have you back. It's always fun when we can sit down and chat about what's going on, especially because you know so much about these Venus star points.
Right.
Can you let everybody know how they can find you?
Oh yeah, they can contact me on, I think I have all my contacts on my YouTube. The handle is at Donny Lim, DONNYLIM. And I think under this video, I'll also put in my link tree, so it's easier for people to find me as well. And I'll also input like the service that I offer that's linked to this, because I do offer like a full-fledged, perhaps like a 90-minute approximate Venus reading that incorporates also the Venus star points as well. And we'll look at how the star points are affecting your path, current steps in your evolutionary journey in this alchemical spiral that we are in. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a great like recap also now that we're getting ready to see Venus go direct in like this next week. So maybe we can have you back in the future and we can talk more about some of these like activation points or when the next ones kind of roll in next year.
I'm not
thank you
looking
guys
forward
so much.
to it. You know, I'm not looking forward, honestly. But
the Gemini one? You're talking about the Gemini or?
No, just looking at the months ahead with the activations, with the lunations, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I was like, we can't catch a break, can we?
Well, people keep thinking that things are going to calm down. I feel like it's just integration now for the rest of the year of like everything that has kind of come up and the changes that need to be made.
I mean, to just kind of give people like the heads up, the Gemini one coming up after this in 2024 June, it is squaring Saturn in Pisces. I'll just leave it as that.
And Jupiter is going to go through there as well. So we're going to see, yeah, we're going to see some things. We're going to see some double trouble. That's for sure. If there's anything that the Venus star points have taught me in Gemini.
I mean, yes. the last one in 2020, the Venus star point at 13.5 degrees of Gemini is exactly squaring Mars in Pisces. And now we're replacing Mars with Saturn. 4 years later. 2 malefics. I'll just leave it as that. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Candice. I think like, I can be a bit more unhinged. That's my era right now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate your likes, your comments, your shares. Let us know, what do you think about some of these Venus retrograde topics? Are you ready for Venus to go direct? What happened to you? What are your thoughts on some of the things that Donny and I discussed? Don't forget to, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Donny's channel, and give us a thumbs up if you can. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much, Donny. You take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure.
All right, bye.